Hey, what's up guys? We are starting a new series on iOS job interview questions. We are gonna deep dive into some of these questions in this series. We're gonna start with a very simple one. The challenge today is how to find repeated characters on a given string. Let's go deep. So we're gonna start our project with a Swift playground and a blank one. Now the playgrounds, as you probably know, are a great place to test your algorithms. Now we know there's repeated characters here and here. Let's write a function where we check more than one repeated character. So we can have an input string of type string and it will return a boolean. Let's have a place. We're gonna do the most immediate way of this thing would be to have like a little brute force thing on this. Let's keep our letters that have been used in that array. Now let's iterate through the array. For a letter in input string, if letters used contains our current letter. If it does, we can return false in that case. Okay, we want to append in our letters that have been used this character. So this will build up until it fails. If it never fails, we're going to reach the end of this loop, so we're going to return true. We can call this, and let's call our string str, which is hello playground. The result is false. Let's try something like 1 2 3 4 5 true. So let's try a different way, different strategy. Now there's one thing in Swift called a set, right? Call this function number 2. Okay, so same thing. We receive an input string of type string, and we are going to return a boolean. That was the requirement of this challenge. What if we do something like this? We have a set. Now in Swift, a set, just like in Objective-C, is a group of objects and they cannot be repeated. So this set will only contain one version of each object we throw at it. Now the nice thing of this is if we throw a string in there, it will input each one of the characters of that string into this set. If they are repeated, it will be skipped. So if we count the size of this and it would match our input string count, well, that would mean that in fact each one of these characters would be different. If they're not, this is going to fail because our set will avoid repeated value. Let's copy this function, but now we call number 2. Let's give it a try. It is false. So there you go, 2 ways of doing this. What about Objective-C? Let's open new project, single view app. So we got our challenge. Why not use the view controller? Let's bring our old iPhone SE 2nd generation. How do we do this in Objective-C? Start by implementing a method. Okay, so we want to return a boolean. Let's call it check more than one repeated character. We are gonna be given an NS string, and let's give it the same name for the sake of simplicity. So it's going to be our input string. The way we do a var in Objective-C is by calling mutable stuff, or NES mutable string. That's how we do a var. A let would be the NS string. It's sort of the same name. And let's initialize this thing, and we want a string object. So let's do a for loop. We're gonna have our NS string, and we're gonna have one char, which will be an NS string string with format, and we want our format to be a character. This is how calling a function from our input string called character at index I. Let us use, we're gonna check if there's a range of string containing our character. And if the location of this is something called not found, print using the log. We are going to call our input string character at index I. If this happens, that means we want to insert in our letters, use this character. Insert our character using append format. What's the character? Same thing. Input string character at index I. What if the character is already there? We are going to print that, and in this case we're going to return false. All right. If we get to the end of this loop, we can safely return true. We are going to call this function. It can be here and the view did load. So let's say a self, and let's pass a string. If we run this, we have repeated characters, so nothing's going to come up here, obviously, but we can see in the console this should be printed because there are repeated characters. String contains repeated characters. Let us create a second function just for the sake of completion of the exercise. Okay, so we're going to call it 2 again. We accept a string, return a boolean, and we want to use now the same strategy. Let's create a set. In our case, we'll cannot add all the characters at once. That's the problem. We're going to need a mutable set and just insert each character in the set at the time. So we're going to have to iterate through this string and just insert each character in the set. Inside our set, let's add an object, and our object will be the character. So input string character at index I. And what could be wrong with this? AKA unsigned short to ID non-null disallowed with ARC. What we have to do is we have to convert it to an asset number with integer, and now we can call our input string. It's the same logic from Swift. Okay, so if our length of the input string is the exact same amount as our set, that means there are no repeated characters, we can safely log a string and we can safely be sure to return true. However, if this is not the case, we can log a string and we then return false. Okay, so let's ask our friend iPhone SE 2nd generation to print. Now let's try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. String does not contain repeated characters. So this was sort of an easy challenge. That's all for today, and I'll see you on the next challenge.